February 23, 1945. Mount Suribachi, Iwo Jima. Private First Class Tadashi Yamamoto crouched in a concrete bunker, his hands shaking as he tried to write. The words he scratched into his diary would have gotten him executed if his officers found them. "The Marines are not human," he wrote. "They do not die like other men. Everything we were told about American weakness was a lie." He had just watched 6 Marines storm his position under machine gun fire. 3 fell. The others kept coming. When grenades tore into them, one Marine absorbed the blast with his own body to shield his squad. Then, wounded beyond what seemed possible, he kept fighting until he physically could not hold his weapon anymore. The survivors took the position in minutes. Yamamoto stared through the firing slit, unable to understand what he had seen. 21,000 Japanese defenders were dug into Iwo Jima's tunnels and bunkers. They had been promised they would face soft American troops who would break under pressure. What they got instead was something that shattered every assumption the Imperial Japanese Army had made about their enemy. The collapse of Japanese confidence did not begin on Iwo Jima. It started years earlier on a jungle island nobody had heard of before the war. August 7, 1942. Guadalcanal, Solomon Islands. Corporal Hideo Takahashi was a veteran of the China campaign, where Japanese forces had seemed unstoppable. After the first week of fighting on Guadalcanal, he wrote in his diary words that would be repeated in captured documents across the Pacific. "The Americans who landed here are different from any enemy we have faced. They do not retreat when surrounded. They do not surrender when their position is hopeless. Most disturbing, they fight at night as if darkness gives them strength rather than fear." Guadalcanal was Japan's first defensive battle in the Pacific. The Imperial Japanese Army expected easy victory over inexperienced American forces. The 1st Marine Division that came ashore numbered just over 16,000 men. Japanese intelligence had described Marines as elite troops. Yes, but still Americans, products of a soft democratic society that valued individual comfort over collective sacrifice. Within days, every assumption proved wrong. Lieutenant Shidru Fukudome commanded a reinforced company ordered to retake Henderson Field on the night of August 20. His unit of 200 men had defeated Chinese divisions 3 times their size. They advanced in textbook fashion, confident Americans would panic in darkness. The Marines were waiting in prepared positions with interlocking fields of fire. Fukudome's company walked into a killing ground. What happened next defied everything in Japanese tactical doctrine. Rather than fortify and defend, the Marines immediately counterattacked into the darkness using automatic weapons with devastating precision. Fukudome's diary, recovered after his death 3 days later, recorded his shock. "They attacked us in the night. We are the ones who attack at night. They moved through jungle we considered impenetrable. They killed in silence, then vanished. By dawn, 90 men remained from my company. The Americans suffered 12 casualties." The pattern repeated across Guadalcanal. Japanese forces, accustomed to enemies who crumbled under banzai charges, discovered Marines who held positions until physically overrun, then fought hand-to-hand with bayonets, knives, and fists. Sergeant Kenji Matsumoto, who survived 4 months on Guadalcanal before evacuation, wrote in a letter intercepted by American intelligence. "We were taught the Americans are individualistic, that they will not sacrifice for their comrades. This is false. I watched a Marine machine gunner continue firing with both legs shattered until Japanese infantry killed him at arm's length. His assistant immediately took the weapon and continued firing. We lost 40 men to that position." The Marine training that created such soldiers baffled Japanese military analysts. Private Yamamoto, who would later face Marines on Iwo Jima, first learned of them during intelligence briefings in 1943. The instructor, a staff officer who had interrogated captured Marines, seemed genuinely disturbed. The American Marines undergo training that would be considered criminal abuse in any civilized army. They are broken down mentally and physically, then rebuilt into something that barely resembles the soft civilians who entered. They are taught to view death in combat as honorable, to never surrender, to fight until physically incapable. He paused. This sounds familiar, yes. They have copied our Bushido, but they added something we did not anticipate: American industrial capacity. The combination proved devastating. Japanese soldiers trained in Bushido expected death before dishonor, but they fought with equipment increasingly inferior to American weapons. Marines underwent training nearly as harsh as Japanese soldiers endured, creating warriors just as willing to die. But those Marines landed with overwhelming firepower that made Japanese positions untenable. November 20, 1943. Tarawa Atoll. Rear Admiral Keiji Shibasaki commanded 4,500 defenders in fortifications considered impregnable. The 2nd Marine Division proved him wrong in 76 hours. Private First Class Tadashi Ogawa, one of only 17 Japanese survivors, told interrogators what he witnessed. The first wave was massacred in the water. We killed hundreds. More craft arrived. The second wave died on the beach. More came. The third wave reached our positions with flamethrowers. They did not stop until we were dead or they were. The mathematics were brutal. Nearly 1,400 Marines died on Tarawa in 76 hours, but the Marines who survived had demonstrated they would take any objective regardless of cost. Documents captured on Saipan in 1944 revealed Japanese intelligence reports describing Marines as shock troops displaying fanatical devotion to objectives. Marines refuse orders to retreat and will counterattack, even when tactically disadvantaged. Casualties inflicted on Marines do not degrade unit effectiveness until the unit is completely destroyed. This classification emerged from systematic study. Captain Yoshio Kobayashi, who survived Guadalcanal, provided detailed comparisons. American Army infantry tactics are sound and conventional. The Marines operate differently. They advance aggressively regardless of casualties. They accept casualty rates that would cause any rational commander to halt. This is unprecedented. The speed of Marine operations proved as devastating as their firepower. Lieutenant Colonel Kunio Nakagawa, who commanded on Peleliu, planned defenses based on previous campaigns where American forces paused after landings. The Marines never paused. They landed September 15 at 0830 hours and controlled half the airfield by nightfall. Nakagawa's diary recorded his shock. My defensive plan collapsed because it assumed the enemy would act rationally. The Marines do not act rationally. They act with total commitment regardless of circumstances. This total commitment manifested in ways that seemed suicidal to Japanese observers, but proved devastatingly effective. Sergeant Kenji Matsumoto, captured on Bougainville, described watching a Marine platoon assault a fortified hilltop position. The approach was across open ground, swept by machine gun fire from 3 bunkers. Japanese doctrine would have required extensive artillery preparation, followed by infantry assault under smoke cover. The Marine lieutenant assessed the position for perhaps 30 seconds, then ordered the assault with no preparation. The platoon charged directly into the fire. 7 men fell in the first 20 seconds. The survivors reached the first bunker and destroyed it with grenades. 3 more men fell assaulting the second bunker. The remaining Marines took it. The third bunker fell to the last 5 men standing. The platoon suffered 12 casualties from 37 men to take a position we considered impregnable. The entire action took 4 minutes. This was not courage. This was systematic application of acceptable casualties to achieve objectives faster than we could respond. The concept of acceptable casualties horrified Japanese officers trained to value their soldiers' lives within the context of achieving objectives. Marines calculated casualties as the cost of victory and paid that cost without hesitation when the objective warranted it. This created a psychological advantage beyond material superiority. Japanese commanders, knowing Marines would accept 50% casualties to take a position, faced impossible decisions. Defend with insufficient force and lose the position. Defend with adequate force but weaken other positions. Abandon the position and cede terrain. Every option led to defeat. The only variable was timing. Major Yoshitaka Hori, senior staff officer on Iwo Jima who survived the battle, analyzed this dilemma in post-war interrogations. General Kuribayashi understood that we could not stop the Marines. Our defenses were designed to delay them and inflict maximum casualties. We succeeded brilliantly at inflicting casualties. Over 26,000 Marines were killed or wounded in 36 days. This would have destroyed any other military force's ability to continue offensive operations. The Marines reinforced and continued attacking without any reduction in intensity. We calculated that inflicting 10,000 casualties would halt their advance for at least a week. They suffered 10,000 casualties in the first week, and their advance never slowed. This revealed the fundamental imbalance. The Marines could replace casualties faster than Japan could. They had 50 Marine divisions in the Pacific Theater or training in the United States. Japan had finite defenders on each island. Mathematics dictated defeat. The mathematics extended beyond simple manpower. Marines landed with logistical support that enabled sustained operations at intensities Japanese forces could not match. Second Lieutenant Toshio Yamamoto, captured on Saipan, witnessed the contrast firsthand during a nighttime infiltration. I led a patrol to observe American positions 3 days after their landing. We expected to find exhausted troops with limited supplies as Japanese forces would have been. Instead, we found Marines eating hot food, receiving ammunition resupply by truck, with medical tents treating wounded and rest areas where units rotated off the line. Their supply dumps contained more ammunition than my entire regiment possessed. They had mobile kitchens preparing fresh meals. They had portable showers. They were fighting the most intense battle of the Pacific War and living better than we did in garrison. This demonstrated that defeating them was impossible. The relentless American logistics created attrition warfare that favored Marines despite higher initial casualties. Japanese defenders fought from fixed positions with limited supplies and no reinforcement. Every casualty was permanent. Every round of ammunition expended could not be replaced. Marines fought from an expanding beachhead with supplies arriving daily. Casualties were evacuated and replaced. Ammunition was unlimited. The longer a battle lasted, the weaker Japanese defenders became while Marines grew stronger. By mid-1944, Japanese military leadership acknowledged that Marines could not be stopped, only delayed. One document captured on Tinian provided guidance that revealed complete abandonment of any hope for victory. When defending against Marine assault, do not expect to hold positions indefinitely. The objective is to delay the American advance sufficiently to enable other strategic objectives. Each day of resistance is valuable. Each Marine killed or wounded is valuable, but understand that the position will fall. Prepare accordingly. Accept that you will likely die in the defense. Your sacrifice buys time for the Empire. There is honor in this sacrifice, even without victory. This grim calculus defined Japanese defensive strategy for the final year of the Pacific War. Defenders no longer fought to win battles. They fought to make those battles so costly that Americans might negotiate rather than invade Japan itself. Marines, by accepting casualties that would have forced other armies to halt, negated this strategy. They paid the price demanded and continued advancing. No cost was too high. No position was too strong. The offensive never stopped. General Tadamichi Kuribayashi, arguably the most capable defensive commander Japan fielded in the Pacific, spent months studying Marine tactics and creating defenses specifically designed to defeat them. His preparations on Iwo Jima were extraordinary. He banned banzai charges that had wasted Japanese lives in previous battles. He created defense in depth that channeled Marines into killing zones covered by multiple bunkers. He positioned artillery to deliver devastating fire on landing beaches. He built 11 miles of tunnels connecting 1,500 cave positions. Every approach was registered for mortar and artillery fire. 3 Marine divisions, 70,000 men, landed on Iwo Jima on February 19, 1945. Kuribayashi's defenses worked exactly as planned. Naval bombardment barely scratched the fortifications. Marines landed in neat waves and immediately took catastrophic casualties. Within minutes, the black volcanic sand was covered with dead and wounded. Japanese artillery observers called down perfectly coordinated fire. Then something happened that Kuribayashi had not anticipated. The Marines did not withdraw to regroup. They advanced into the artillery fire. They found gaps between Japanese positions and exploited them. When bunkers stopped the advance, demolition teams crawled forward under fire to destroy them. When those teams died, other Marines took their place. The attack never stopped. Private First Class Tadashi Yamamoto watched from his bunker as Marines assaulted the position to his right. A Marine flamethrower team approached. "We killed the operator." His assistant picked up the weapon and continued. "We killed him." A third Marine took the weapon. "We wounded him severely." He continued firing until the weapon was empty. Then he threw grenades into the firing ports until we killed him. By then, demolition engineers had reached the bunker entrance. The position was lost. This happened 30 times in the first hour. How do you defeat men who will not stop? The answer, as Japanese defenders discovered, was that you could not. The brutal arithmetic of Iwo Jima demonstrated Marine doctrine in its purest form. 70,000 Marines landed. 26,000 became casualties, including nearly 7,000 killed. But all 21,000 Japanese defenders died except for 216 who were captured, most because they were unconscious or too wounded to resist. The Marines paid an almost unimaginable price, but they took every objective. Kuribayashi himself, who survived until late March 1945, wrote his final assessment in a message smuggled to Tokyo before the position collapsed. "The Marines are the most effective fighting force I have encountered. They possess several attributes that make them uniquely dangerous. First, their training creates soldiers willing to accept casualties that would break other units. Second, their firepower exceeds ours by factors of 5 to 1 in artillery and 10 to 1 in air support. Third, their junior leaders make decisions at squad level that our officers make at company level, allowing them to exploit opportunities faster than we can react. Fourth, and most critical, they never stop attacking. There is no defense that can survive this combination indefinitely." This final point terrified Japanese defenders across the Pacific. Soldiers could accept defeat in battle. They could understand being outgunned or outmaneuvered. What they could not comprehend was an enemy that simply would not stop regardless of losses. Corporal Hideo Takahashi, who fought on 3 islands before his capture on Okinawa, explained in a post-war interview, "You must understand the difference between Marines and other American forces. Army units would attack, take casualties, and pull back to reorganize. This is sensible military doctrine. Marines would attack, take casualties, and continue attacking over the bodies of their own dead. This is not military doctrine. This is something else entirely." The quality that made Marines so feared was deliberately created through training that broke recruits down to nothing, then rebuilt them into warriors whose identity was inseparable from the Corps itself. Documents captured on Saipan included interrogation reports of a Marine prisoner who explained the transformation. Boot camp lasts 8 weeks. For the first 4 weeks, drill instructors destroy everything civilian in the recruit. You are told you are worthless, that you will never be a Marine, that you should quit. The abuse is psychological and physical. You are pushed until you think you cannot continue, then pushed further. Those who quit are publicly shamed. Those who remain learn that surrender is not an option. The second 4 weeks, the instructors build you into a Marine. You learn that you are part of something greater than yourself, that every Marine who ever lived is your brother. This created something unique. Marines fought because to fail was to betray every Marine who had ever lived. The psychological pressure created fighters who would advance when rational calculations said to stop. The most comprehensive assessment came from General Kuribayashi's final message from Iwo Jima, delivered through desperate radio transmission on March 21, 5 days before the island fell. I have fought the Marines for 31 days. They are the finest soldiers I have encountered. Their training is superior, their equipment is overwhelming, their courage equals ours, and their numbers are endless. Japan cannot defeat such an enemy. We can only die fighting them and hope that our sacrifice buys time for peace negotiations. To my fellow officers preparing to defend the home islands, know this. The Marines will come. You cannot stop them. You can only make them pay in blood for every meter of ground. That hope died with the atomic bombs in August. But Kuribayashi's assessment of Marines proved accurate. They were the tip of the spear that broke Japanese defensive lines across the Pacific. They paid a terrible price with casualty rates that would have destroyed lesser organizations, but they never broke, never retreated, never surrendered an objective. They were exactly what Japanese propaganda had claimed the Imperial Japanese Army was: invincible warriors who would fight to death before accepting defeat. The final irony was that Marines achieved this through systematic training and overwhelming material support, not through mystical warrior spirit or racial superiority. They proved that modern warfare required both courage and industrial capacity, both training and technology, both individual sacrifice and national resources. Japan had courage and training. America had everything. The Marines embodied that totality in a way no other American unit matched. Japanese veterans recognized this distinction. Corporal Hideo Takahashi, interviewed in 1975 as an old man, summarized what his generation learned fighting Marines. We were taught that spirit conquers material, that our will to die made us invincible. The Marines taught us that spirit plus material conquers spirit alone. They were as willing to die as we were, but they had Sherman tanks and naval gunfire and unlimited ammunition, and air supremacy and medical care and food and all the resources of America behind them. We had our rifles and our courage and promises of victory. That was not enough. It was never going to be enough. The Marines proved that on every island they took,